And welcome to Hannity. And tonight, the 2024 election is in the books, and Thanksgiving, we have a lot to be thankful for, is just around the corner. But unfortunately, some on the radical left, they are determined to use the holiday season to take another political stand. They want to cast out their own family and close friends. I'm not making it up. You decide.
I completely understand her point, because I really do feel that this candidate, President-elect Trump, is just a different type of candidate. From the things he's said and the things he's done and the things he will do, it's more of a moral issue for me.
Don't want to be at Thanksgiving dinner with her. Probably turkey legs, mashed potatoes being thrown around. Anyway, tonight, we're going to take a step back. Dr. Drew Pinsky is going to join us with advice how to navigate what will be a very challenging holiday season for so many families with loved ones who are totally consumed with Trump derangement syndrome. But while hysteria continues on the left, Donald Trump is getting to work big time. Breaking only moments ago, Donald Trump announced that our good friend and our colleague, Pete Hegseth, he will be nominated as the Secretary of Defense. Now, Pete is an Army veteran. He served in Iraq. He served in Afghanistan. He also earned 2 Bronze Stars. He also holds degrees from Princeton and Harvard and has made it his life's work to advocate for our veterans and active duty service members. His passion is and has always been the U.S. military, and that I know is a fact. And that's not all. The president-elect also announced that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy will lead the new Department of Government Efficiency. Get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. Wouldn't that be great? According to Elon Musk, quote, this will send shock waves through the system. Anyone involved in government waste, which is a lot of people, well, their work will conclude no later than July 4th, 2026. As President Trump stated, quote, this will be the perfect gift to America on the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Meanwhile, Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, my senator, is now expected to be tapped as Donald Trump's Secretary of State. Former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe, he has now been picked to lead the CIA. Congressman Mike Waltz, a decorated Green Beret, will join Trump as his national security advisor. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem has been picked to be the Homeland Security Secretary. And former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, who will join us in just a moment. He has been nominated as the next U.S. ambassador to Israel. As FoxNews.com put it, Donald Trump is forming his cabinet at breakneck speed compared to 2016. And tomorrow, the president-elect, he is scheduled to be at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue to meet at the White House with Joe Biden. Earlier today, when asked about his meeting, Karine Jean-Pierre was short on details, as per usual. What a shock. Take a look.
Did President Biden invite Vice President Harris to this meeting with Donald Trump tomorrow?
This is a meeting with the president and the president-elect. This is the norm, that the incoming president and the current president sit down in the Oval Office and have a discussion, and that's what you're going to see tomorrow, is the norm, what we normally would see when we are talking about a peaceful transition of power.
President Biden says that he's not going to pardon his son Hunter. Is he going to ask Donald Trump to do that?
I don't have anything else to share about that. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole on this. I've been very clear. The president's been very clear when we've been asked this question.
In reality, this is not business as usual. In fact, that will be a running theme throughout the second Trump term. And as for Hunter Biden and that pardon, the president-elect is not ruling it out for the sake of national unity. We will find out in the days, weeks, and months to come. On the campaign trail, President Trump said he wouldn't take it off the books, despite the egregious lawfare by the Biden administration and the fact that Hunter is, quote, a bad guy, or a bad boy, to quote him exactly. Now, Melania Trump, on the other hand, well, is not quite as forgiving, and I don't blame her. According to the New York Post, she declined an invitation to meet with Dr. Jill Biden tomorrow, citing the unprecedented raid at Mar-a-Lago authorized by the weaponized Department of Justice of Joe Biden, saying, quote, a source saying, she ain't going. A source familiar with Melania's decision told the Post Jill Biden's husband authorized the FBI snooping through her underwear drawer, and the Bidens are disgusting. And Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton, remember this, they both had top secret classified information. Joe had it in 4 separate locations. Their homes were not invaded. Donald Trump never had used BleachBit or used hammers and removed SIM cards and broke up devices. But this weaponization of justice must forever, Democrat, Republican, end. It has got to stop. The DOJ, the FBI being politicized, intel agencies politicized, they now need to return forever to their original non-political purpose and their former greatness. That has got to be the goal. But the Bidens will soon be out of the White House once and for all. And on January 20th, 2025, the reckoning will begin in the Washington swamp. The monolithic far-left city that does not represent the whole of America is about to be rocked to its core. But despite the fear-mongering on the left, Donald Trump is not threatening democracy. He's not threatening our Constitution. America's massive bureaucracy, on the other hand, will soon face a very heavy dose of reality. Again, this is not going to be business as usual. That is not what the American people voted for. The decentralization of power, as our founders intended, is very much on its way to D.C. And the new Department of Government Efficiency will take an axe to government waste, fraud, and abuse. In fact, Trump now plans to eliminate the entire Department of Education, send that money directly to the states. They would better know how to use it. Other departments like the EPA and the Bureau of Land Management can soon be relocated outside of the Washington swamp, and expect to see a major overhaul of the DOJ, DHS, and the FBI's Washington field office. Government agencies have been unaccountable and, frankly, out of control for far too long. And a pervasive far-left bias has tarnished America's once great institutions. They need to be restored. The only way to carry out the MAGA agenda and restore equal justice under the law is to reform America's bloated anti-Trump bureaucracy. Now, this will be a tall order, but it is one of the most important things the president must do at the very beginning of his administration. The stakes are high. The problems are big. The border, it must be secured immediately. Millions of criminal, illegal immigrants, including gang members, cartel members, drug dealers, people that we know are murderers and rapists, those that are known terrorists, they must be found. They must be deported. Peace, law, and order must be restored in every small town and every big city and around the world. America must now lead the way with energy dominance, innovation, development. Americans should not have to settle for a townhouse instead of a home with a backyard. Trump can and will restore the American dream and get government off of your back. It's called freedom. For far too long, Democratic elites in Washington, they have exerted their powers like petty tyrants. Those days, hopefully, will soon be over and end, and America will start functioning like a true republic once again. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.